Welcome to my series on the mother wound, and we're going to talk today about what kinds of behaviors create the mother wound, because there are quite a range of things that can happen, and you might have almost all of these, you might have a few. There is no specific number that says, oh, you get the wound and you don't, because we're talking about the intersection between who we are, who our parents are, our own genetics, our own temperament, disposition, and that interplay that is so difficult to understand. But I found that, and the research shows, I think, in most of the books that talk about these kind of wounds, especially when we talk about moms who've struggled with disorders like narcissism or borderline, but are often also called immature, we know that certain behavioral patterns and emotional patterns tend to create wounds. So let's get into what those look like. We're really talking about, number one, a constant and chronic demeaning, minimization, and invalidation of who you are. In fact, highly invalidating environments are the core. As I was talking in yesterday's video about this nest that creates the mother wound, I would say that a highly invalidating environment by any parent, frankly, can create a wound or partner, but we're talking about in general. So feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling safe, like you matter, that's going to be the core of it. So we can see a lot of criticism, demeaning, minimizing, in that kind of regard. Like, oh, who do you think you are? You don't feel that way. Don't get too big for your britches. Those are like old comments, but that's kind of how it is. Like, who do you think you are? Don't shine too bright. By the way, if they're narcissistic, shine enough so I can feel good about who you are and who I am. But don't take the light away from me, for example. We can often see parents who scapegoat kids, who blame them. This is your fault. It's your fault for our bad relationship. Things like that. Behaviors and punishments that are very specific to saying, there's something wrong with you. You're bad. You're unlovable. Having a parent who only takes credit, like I said, when things are good, and so they take no ownership over the things that you struggle with as a child. They see you or hold you accountable as an adult, like you're just a mini adult and you should know better. And so they shame and blame you for things you do that are very normally child appropriate, and this would be a pattern. They treat you like they never really honor your developing self, and so you're always 5 in their eyes, even when you're 30, right? There's no honoring of your evolution as a human being. And it's always like they're up here and you're down here. They're emotionally chronically unstable. And so you get great love, what I call good love, you get bad love, when you never know what to expect and you walk on eggshells. And so you're living in a chronic state of hypervigilance or fight or flight because you're always scanning for the parent to be upset with you or someone else, or to misinterpret things, to be angry, to be emotional, whatever. Parents who tend to use you as best friends, as therapists, who have really poor boundaries. They overshare about their own, intimate life, their partner, or they invade your privacy. There's no respect, once again, for your autonomy, especially as you're growing and developing. They often will be very charming in front of others, these kind of parents, and so you feel very confused about who they present as versus who they really are. And so in public, they're a very different version. And so that disintegration is very confusing inside. It's like, well, who are they? So there's no stable internalization for you of who the mother is or the parent. They try to always shine brighter than you. They have to upstage you. They have to get more attention than you do. It's always about them in some way. They might be inappropriate with your friends, trying to get attention, might flirt with your partners, even when you're, like a young person. They might try to live their lives through you, so they make you feel completely responsible for their happiness, their well-being, like you are their world, which is why I get so triggered when people say, my child is my best friend, and the kid's like 5 or it's a baby. It's one thing when you get, as you get older and become closer to adults, to have a very close friendship relationship, but it is the idea that you've just given birth to your best friend. Like, that is not the role of a child. They might try to never respect your boundaries, and so over-manage you, over-control, over-insert themselves in your life. And so once again, you just have no personal privacy or space for who you are, or they actively tell you, no, that's not who you are, and you only matter when you're doing, this thing or whatever that is. They might imply that you're the reason for their unhappiness, their bad marriage, their depression, their mental health issues, their chronic health. So they're very harmful in their language and their blaming and shaming behaviors. They might imply that they will use money in some way, that if you do what they want, then they're financially controlling, and they only give you money or pay for things when it reflects what they want from you. They ignore your feelings. They discount who you are, going back to invalidation. If you're upset, it's like there's no space for your emotions. It always goes back to how you're making them feel. They rage, they scream, they're impulsive, right? The whole core of that is that inconsistency and lack of predictability. They might be frightened and frightening, like in disorganized attachment. So they might scream and yell at you and then be really dissociated or, scared themselves. They're not really present for you physically, mentally, or emotionally. They could be abandoning of you. They could have been a part of your life and then just no longer a part of your life. There's a very conditional type of love, so that, like I'm saying, you just don't know what will get you love and what won't. And at the core, we're talking about mothers who really only see themselves through their own lens. So they can never say, hey, you know what, you're right. I didn't handle that well. That wasn't very nice of me. Or I'm having a bad day and it wasn't your fault, but I'm sorry for how I acted. There's no real ownership. And so we're just talking about a caregiver who is not very responsive, who is conditionally responsive, who is invalidating, who is emotionally unsafe and unpredictable, who is critical, controlling. If you think about these patterns, and I know that you know what I'm talking about, it's not about, there were times when my parent was struggling, so they weren't there for me as much. Like, that happens in life. It's just life. You can't always be, even if you want to be the greatest caregiver. But these tend to be the kind of parents who, over the course of the entire childhood, the pattern was pretty much the same. And it pretty much was in an invalidation of who you were and who you are today. But when you pair that with what the world tells us about mothers, you may not have had the language as a child to understand what all these things were. But those tend to be the pattern and collection of behaviors that often create the mother wound. Feel free to add any more. I know there are many more down below. And I will see you tomorrow. We'll talk more about the mother wound. Please feel free to subscribe if you're new here, and know that I post content pretty much every day now on YouTube as a result of what's going on TikTok. And I'm pretty much posting every day on TikTok as usual. So if you're, want someone who wants to learn more about these things, please feel free to follow me there. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.